Hello, my good friends. How are you today? May God bless you all. I will not introduce anything. You guys watch the video and feel it. Then let's evaluate together. The bridal suite smelled like hope and heartbreak, a mix of rose petals and the sharp tang of my own panic. My wedding dress clung to me, its silk and beadwork heavy with the weight of a dream that was slipping away. Through the tall windows of the old mansion just outside New York City, I could see the garden where 300 guests waited their chatter, rising like a storm cloud. The string quartet played a soft melody, each note a reminder of the forever I'd been promised. But Ethan Caldwell, the man who'd sworn to meet me at the altar, was nowhere to be found. I stood in the center of the room, my hands shaking as I gripped the lace veil my mom had pinned into my braids hours ago. Nia, my best friend and maid of honor, hovered nearby, her eyes darting between me and the clock. "He's probably just caught in traffic," she said, her voice tight like she was trying to hold the world together with words. But it was past 2:00 p.m. and Ethan wasn't the type to be late. He ran a tech empire worth billions his life, a masterclass in precision. Something was wrong, and the knot in my stomach knew it before my heart did. My mom, Lillian, sat quietly on an antique chaise, her hands folded, watching me with that steady gaze she'd used when I was a kid facing a bully or a bad grade. My cousins and college friends, all in their bridesmaid dresses, sipped mimosas, their laughter fading as the minutes ticked by. The wedding planner, a woman with a clipboard and a forced smile, popped in again, her voice too bright. "Just a little delay, Zara. Happens all the time." It didn't happen to Ethan. I tried his phone, but it went straight to voicemail. My text sat unanswered, the blue bubble mocking me. By 2:15, the planner's smile was gone, and my pulse was a drumbeat in my ears. I paced the hardwood floor, my heels clicking, the dress swishing like a ghost trailing me. Nia grabbed my hand, her nails digging in. "Breathe. Zara. He's coming." But he wasn't. The door creaked open, and Miles, Ethan's best friend, stepped inside his face, ashen under his tailored suit. My heart plummeted, a stone sinking to the bottom of a cold lake. "Zara," he said, his voice low, avoiding my eyes. "Ethan sent me to talk to you." "Where is he?" I asked, my voice sharp, cutting through the hush of the room. My bridesmaids froze their glasses, clinking softly as they set them down. Miles hesitated, then handed me an envelope crisp and embossed with Ethan's initials like something he'd used to seal a business deal. "He asked me to give you this," he said. "He's not coming." The words hit like a slap, stealing my breath. My knees buckled and I sank onto the chaise, the dress pooling around me like spilled ink. Nia let out a sharp, "What the hell?" her hand flying to her mouth. My mom stood, her face a mask of fury and pain, but I barely saw her. My world was narrowing to the envelope in my hands, my fingers trembling as I tore it open. The letter was handwritten. Ethan's neat scrawl, a cruel contrast to the chaos it unleashed. "My dearest Zara, by the time you read this, I'll be on a plane out of the country. I can't go through with our wedding, and it's killing me to hurt you like this. The pressure from my family, my board, my investors, it's too much. They threaten to take everything I've built. If I married you, I thought I was strong enough to fight for us, but I failed you. You deserve a man who'll put you first no matter what. Please forgive me someday. All my love. Ethan." Tears blurred the ink, each word a blade carving into my chest. The room was silent except for my ragged breaths and the faint hum of the garden outside, where guests still thought they were here for a love story. My mom knelt beside me, her hand warm on mine, but I couldn't speak Ethan, the man who'd flown me to Miami, just to dance under the stars, who'd kissed me like I was his whole world, had chosen his empire over me. Over us. Miles shifted, his voice awkward. "The company'll cover all the costs," he said, placing another envelope on the side table. and Ethan set up a settlement for you. I'm sorry. Zara. Rage flared hot and bright. I grabbed the envelope and hurled it at him, my voice breaking. Tell Ethan to shove his money. I didn't love him for his bank account. I loved him. Miles flinched, mumbling something, and slipped out. The door clicked shut, and the reality crashed over me like a wave. 300 guests were waiting for a wedding that wasn't happening. My dad would have to face them, his quiet strength carrying the weight of my humiliation. The tabloids would feast. Billionaire dumps, black fiancé at altar. And Ethan was already gone, flying away from the mess he'd made, leaving me to drown in it. 1 year earlier, I never thought I'd fall for a guy like Ethan Caldwell. At 32, I had my life on lock. I was a senior marketing director at Carter & Wells, a New York firm where I'd hustled my way up from intern to corner office. My Brooklyn apartment was my pride. Small but mine, filled with vintage records, photos of my family, and the kind of vibe that screamed Zara Brooks. I was good, thriving at work, chilling with friends, dating here and there, but keeping it light. Love was a risk I didn't need. Not after guys who either saw my blackness as a fetish or couldn't handle my drive. That morning I was late for a big client pitch, juggling my laptop, a portfolio, and a coffee so hot it burned through the cup. The Midtown high-rise was all glass and ego, and I was halfway through the revolving doors when I slammed into someone. My coffee erupted, splashing across a suit that looked like it cost more than my rent. Tailored, crisp, screaming money. Oh, crap. I'm so sorry, I stammered. Scrambling for napkins in my bag, I looked up and my stomach flipped. Ethan Caldwell. His face was on enough magazine covers, Forbes, Fortune, you name it, that I knew him instantly. Tech billionaire, one of the richest guys in the country and way out of my orbit. His dark hair was tousled, his green eyes sparkling with something like amusement. My bad, he said, his voice smooth, like we were chatting at a bar, not standing in a coffee-soaked lobby. Gotta say, though, this is one hell of an intro. I was mortified, my cheeks burning as I dabbed at his suit with a crumpled tissue. I'll cover the dry cleaning, I swear, I said, knowing my bank account would cry. He waved it off, pulling a business card from his pocket. Send me the bill for your outfit instead, and maybe let me take you to dinner to make it right. His smile was warm, disarming, but I wasn't buying it. I took the card, but my guard was up. Guys like Ethan didn't date women like me. They played, they flaunted, then they moved on. I'd seen friends fall for that charm only to get burned. Plus the lobby was buzzing, heads turning as people clocked a black woman and a white billionaire swapping small talk. I could feel their stares, hear the unspoken questions. What's she doing with him? 3 days later, a bouquet of protea flowers showed up at my office, bold, colorful, straight out of my grandma's Atlanta garden. The note read, "Still waiting on that dry cleaning bill, dinner instead. Ethan." My co-workers swooned, but I wasn't falling for it. I shot back a polite email, blaming my schedule. Truth was, I didn't trust his vibe. Men with that kind of power took what they wanted, and I wasn't about to be a trophy. Ethan didn't quit. The next day, a catered lunch arrived for my whole team, fried chicken, mac and cheese, collard greens like he'd raided my mom's kitchen. Another note. 1 hour Zara, that's all I'm asking. My colleagues practically pushed me out the door when he showed up. No driver, just him in a casual blazer leaning against a vintage Mustang like he'd stepped out of a movie. He took me to a tiny art gallery in Harlem, closed for a private showing of black women artists I'd mentioned loving in our lobby chat. We walked between vibrant paintings, talking about everything. Gentrification, my grandma's peach cobbler, his dad's obsession with old jazz records. He listened. Really listened. His hand brushing mine, sending a spark up my arm when he asked, "What's the real Zara Brooks like, not the marketing boss?" I let my guard down. Just a little. I grew up in Atlanta, I said, staring at a canvas of a woman with eyes like fire. block parties, soul food. My mom working double shifts to keep me and my brother straight. I learned early I'd have to hustle twice as hard to get half as far. That's why I'm here building something that's mine. He nodded, his gaze steady. I get it. My dad started Caldwell Tech in a garage and he drilled into me that the world doesn't give you anything. I've been running ever since. That night outside my apartment, he didn't push for more. He just tucked a braid behind my ear and asked, "Can I kiss you?" It was soft, tentative, not the move of a player, but a man who meant it. When our lips met, warm and searching, I felt my walls crack just enough to let him in, back to the present. The bridal suite was a cage, now the roses choking me. I clutched Ethan's letter, my tears smudging the ink. Nia knelt beside me, her voice fierce. "He's a coward, Zara. You're better than this." "Don't," I whispered, shaking my head. My mom's hand rubbed my back, her silence louder than words. I was drowning in questions. Had I been blind to the signs, the board's pressure, Miles's warnings, Ethan's late-night calls? Or had he never meant to go through with it, playing me for a fool? I stood my dress heavy, but my resolve hardening. "I'll tell them," I said, my voice steadier. "I'm not hiding." Nia's eyes widened, but my mom nodded, pride flickering through her pain. I walked to the garden, my heels sinking into the grass, the guests falling silent as I took the mic. "There's no wedding today," I said, my voice carrying over the flowers and stunned faces. "Thank you for coming. Please go home." Gasps followed, phones flashing, but I turned and walked away, my mom and Nia at my side. As we slipped out the back, I knew the headlines were coming, the world ready to judge. But this was my story, and I wasn't done writing it. A call to you. If Zara's heartbreak hit you where it hurts, stick with us to see how she rises from the ashes. Hit that subscribe button and drop a comment. Tell us about a time someone let you down and how you kept going. Your stories fuel ours, and we're here for every step of Zara's journey. Let's do this together. The weeks after that first kiss were a whirlwind, like something out of a movie I'd never thought I'd star in. Ethan Caldwell wasn't just a billionaire with a private jet and a penthouse that took up half a floor in Manhattan. He was the guy who showed up at my Brooklyn apartment with takeout from Desta's when I was buried in work, who texted me silly memes at 2 a.m., who remembered I loved protea flowers because they reminded me of my grandma's garden in Atlanta. He was real, or at least he felt real, and that scared me as much as it thrilled me. I'd spent years building walls around my heart, focusing on my career at Carter & Wells, where I'd fought tooth and nail to become a senior marketing director. Love was a luxury I couldn't afford, not after the string of guys who either fetishized my blackness or couldn't handle my ambition. But Ethan, he was different. He saw me not just the polished exec in a power suit, but the Zara who blasted Lauryn Hill on Saturday mornings and danced like nobody was watching. And damn, did he make it hard to keep those walls up. Our third date was when I knew I was in trouble. He flew me to Miami on a whim just because I'd mentioned loving the ocean. No business meetings, no entourage, just us. A rented convertible and a playlist he'd made with Outkast and Erykah Badu to make me laugh. We ended up at a beachfront jazz club, the kind with fairy lights strung over the sand, and a saxophone player who made the night feel like a dream. Ethan pulled me onto the makeshift dance floor, his hands warm on my waist, the rhythm of the music sinking into my bones. "You're good at this," I said, smirking as he spun me, my red dress flaring around my thighs. "Only 'cause I've got the best partner," he shot back, his green eyes glinting under the moonlight. He pulled me closer, our bodies swaying to the slow, sultry beat. His breath grazed my neck, sending a shiver down my spine, and when he pressed a soft kiss just below my ear, I felt the world tilt. My hands slid up his chest, fingers curling into his shirt, and for a moment it was just us. No tabloids, no boardrooms, no whispers about what a black woman and a white billionaire were doing together. "Zara," he murmured, his lips brushing my skin. "I'm falling for you." Hard. My heart stuttered. I wanted to say it back, to let the words spill out, but fear held me back. Instead, I kissed him deep and hungry, tasting salt and desire on his lips. The ocean roared behind us, and I let myself believe just for that night that this could be real, that Miami night became our blueprint. Ethan swept me into his world, but he didn't try to change mine. He showed up at my office with coffee when I was pulling all-nighters, sat through my rants about clients, and even tried his hand at cooking collard greens after I told him about my mom's recipe. He burned them, of course, but we laughed until we cried, eating pizza on my couch, instead his arm around me like it was the most natural thing in the world. One weekend I took him to Atlanta to meet my family. I was nervous as hell. My mom Lillian and my brother Jaden weren't exactly the type to be dazzled by money. We pulled up to my mom's modest ranch house in a neighborhood where kids still played in the street and neighbors waved from their porches. The air smelled of barbecue and jasmine and outcasts so fresh, so clean, blasted from someone's backyard. Ethan, in his tailored blazer and jeans, looked like he'd stepped out of a different universe. Inside, my mom greeted him with a warm but cautious smile, her eyes sizing him up. Jaden, a community organizer with a permanent chip on his shoulder, wasn't so subtle. Over dinner, gumbo cornbread and peach cobbler that made Ethan groan in delight. Jaden leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. "So, Ethan," he said, his tone sharp, "you get what it's like for Zara out there. Not just at your fancy galas, but every day walking into rooms where people assume she's the help." I shot Jaden a look, but Ethan didn't flinch. He set down his fork, meeting Jaden's gaze. "I'm learning," he said. "I know I've got blind spots, but I'm here because I want to understand. Because I care about her." Jaden grunted, unimpressed, but my mom's expression softened. Later, as we washed dishes, she pulled me aside. "He's trying, baby," she said, drying a plate. "But men like him, their world's not built for us. Be careful." I nodded, but I was already too far gone. That night, Ethan and I danced in my mom's backyard to an old Nina Simone record. The stars bright above us, his hands settled on my hips, and I felt that familiar jolt like he was waking up parts of me I'd kept locked away. When he kissed me slow and deliberate, I didn't care who was watching. For the first time, I let myself believe in us. The cracks didn't show up right away. Ethan's world was dazzling. Private jets, rooftop parties, weekends at his beach house in Miami. But it came with a price. I started noticing the looks at his events, the way certain people's smiles didn't reach their eyes when Ethan introduced me as his girlfriend. At a tech conference in San Francisco, a reporter asked if I was Ethan's diversity hire, and though Ethan shut it down with a cold, "She's the woman I love," the comment lingered like a bruise. The first real fracture came at a charity gala in Manhattan, a glittering affair at the Plaza Hotel. The room was a sea of tuxedos and sequined gowns, chandeliers casting golden light over tables set with crystal. I wore a deep emerald dress that hugged my curves, my braids swept into an elegant updo, but I still felt like an outsider. Ethan was in his element, shaking hands and charming donors, but I caught the whispers, the glances that lingered too long. At the bar, waiting for a drink, an older woman in a pearl necklace tapped my arm. "Excuse me, dear," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "Are you with the catering staff? I need more champagne at table 6. My stomach twisted. I forced a smile, my voice steady. "I'm not staff. I'm here with Ethan Caldwell." Her face flushed, but she didn't apologize, just muttered something and walked away. I gripped my glass. The room suddenly too warm, too loud. Ethan found me a moment later, his hand slipping to the small of my back. "You okay?" he asked, his brow furrowed. I told him what happened, my voice low but shaking. "It's not just her, Ethan. It's every time we're in a room like this. People look at me and see, I don't know, someone who doesn't belong." His jaw tightened and he pulled me closer, his voice fierce. "You belong with me. They don't matter, Zara. Only we do." He meant it. I could see it in his eyes, but I wasn't so sure. Later that night, as we danced under the chandeliers, I overheard a snippet of conversation between Miles and another man. Their voices low but clear. "She's great." "Sure," Miles was saying, "but is she worth the risk? The board's already antsy about Ethan's image." The other man chuckled. "A fling's one thing, but long-term, that's a whole different game." I froze my hand, tightening on Ethan's shoulder. He didn't hear, too busy whispering in my ear about how beautiful I looked, but the words sank into me, cold and heavy. When we got back to his penthouse, I confronted him, my voice sharper than I intended. "Did you know your board's talking about me?" I asked. Kicking off my heels, Miles said, "I'm a risk to your image." Ethan's face darkened. "Miles talks too much." I told him to back off. "My personal life's not up for debate." "But it is, Ethan," I said, crossing my arms. "You're not just a guy, you're a brand. And I'm—" "What?" "The black girlfriend who's making waves." He stepped closer, his hands cupping my face. "You're the woman I'm crazy about. I don't care what they think." He kissed me then, hard and urgent, like he could erase my doubts with his touch. I wanted to believe him, so I let him pull me into his arms, let the heat of his body drown out the noise in my head. But as I lay in his bed, later staring at the city skyline through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was walking a tightrope, and one wrong step could send me crashing. The next morning, Ethan tried to make it right. He canceled his meetings and took me to a tiny cafe in Harlem, the kind with mismatched chairs and a jukebox playing Marvin Gaye. We sat in a corner booth sharing pancakes and coffee, and he reached for my hand across the table. "I'm sorry about last night," he said, his thumb brushing my knuckles. "I should have shut that crap down sooner. I'm in this, Zara." All the way I wanted to believe him, but Jaden's words echoed in my mind. Their world's not built for us. Still, I squeezed his hand, forcing a smile. "You better be," I said, trying to keep it light. "I don't let just anybody burn my mom's collard greens." He laughed, the tension easing, and for a moment it was just us again. But as we left the cafe, I caught a glimpse of a tabloid headline on a newsstand, Caldwell's New Flame, "Who is Zara Brooks?" The photo was from the gala, my emerald dress vibrant against Ethan's tux. The article was probably full of speculation, and I didn't want to read it, but it was a reminder. Our love wasn't just ours. It was public property, and not everyone was rooting for us. That night, Ethan took me back to Miami, as if he could outrun the whispers. We walked along the beach, the sand cool under my bare feet, the waves crashing in a steady rhythm. He stopped pulling me into his arms, his forehead resting against mine. "I love you," he said, his voice raw like the words had been fighting to get out. "I've never felt this way about anyone. You make me want to be better. Zara." My breath caught. I'd been holding back, afraid of what it meant to love a man like him, but standing there with the ocean at our backs and his heart in his hands, I couldn't hold back anymore. "I love you too," I whispered, my voice cracking. He kissed me slow and deep, his hands sliding down my back, pulling me closer until there was no space between us. The world fell away, and I felt like I was flying, like nothing could touch us. But even as I lost myself in him, a small part of me wondered, how long can this last? Loving Ethan Caldwell was like standing on the edge of a cliff, exhilarating, terrifying, and impossible to turn back from. 6 months into our relationship, I was all in my heart, tangled up in his promises and his touch. He'd become my safe place, the man who could make me laugh until my sides hurt, who'd fly me across the country just to see a sunset I'd mentioned in passing. But every time I thought we were untouchable, the world reminded me we weren't. The whispers at his galas, the tabloid headlines, the way Miles looked at me like I was a problem to be solved. They were all cracks in the fairy tale I was trying so hard to believe in. Still, Ethan had a way of making those cracks disappear, at least for a while. He'd pull me into his arms, his lips brushing my forehead, and I'd forget the world outside. That's how we ended up on his private island off Hilton Head, a slice of paradise where the water was so clear you could see fish darting beneath the surface. He'd planned the trip as a reset after a rough week. Another board meeting where Miles had dropped hints about optics. Another article speculating about whether I was the one, or just a phase I was tired of it. And Ethan could tell the island was a dream. No Wi-Fi, no paparazzi. Just us in a sleek open-air villa with white linen curtains fluttering in the breeze. We spent our days swimming, laughing, and eating fresh mangoes under palm trees. At night we'd lie on a massive outdoor bed draped with sheer fabric. The stars so bright it felt like we could touch them. It was there on our third night that everything changed. We'd just come back from a moonlight swim, my skin still salty from the ocean, my braids damp against my back. Ethan had lit candles around the bed, their flames flickering in the warm air. He pulled me close, his hands tracing the curve of my waist, and I felt that familiar heat, the kind that made my pulse race. His kisses were slow, deliberate, moving from my lips to my neck, then lower, each one. A spark that set my body alight. I arched into him, my fingers digging into his shoulders, and for a moment the world was nothing but us. Our breaths, our bodies, the rhythm of the waves below. "Zara," he whispered against my skin, his voice rough with emotion. "You're everything." I laughed softly, my hands sliding down his chest. "You say that now, but wait till I steal all the covers tonight." He didn't laugh. Instead, he pulled back, his eyes searching mine with an intensity that made my heart skip. "I mean it," he said. "I've spent my life chasing things, deals, power, success, but none of it feels right without you." Before I could respond, he reached into the pocket of his linen shirt discarded on the bed and pulled out a small velvet box. My breath caught. He opened it, revealing a diamond ring that caught the candlelight, scattering tiny rainbows across the sheets. It was stunning, ethically sourced, he'd later tell me, but in that moment all I could see was the look in his eyes, vulnerable, almost scared, like he was laying his entire soul bare. "Zara Brooks," he said, his voice trembling. "You see me, not my money, not my company, just me. You make me want to be a better man every single day. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Will you marry me?" The world stopped. My hands flew to my mouth, tears prickling my eyes. I'd imagined this moment before, late at night when I couldn't sleep. But nothing prepared me for the rawness of it. The way his words cracked open something inside me. I wanted to say yes, to leap into the future he was offering, but a small voice whispered, "Can you really do this? His world isn't yours." He was still waiting, his hands steady, but his eyes searching. I took a breath, pushing the doubt aside. "Yes," I said, my voice breaking. "Yes, Ethan, I'll marry you." His face lit up, and he slid the ring onto my finger, his hands shaking. Then he kissed me deep and fierce, like he was sealing a vow. We fell back onto the bed, laughter mixing with tears, our bodies entwined as the candles burned low. It was perfect, a moment I'd carry forever. But even as I lost myself in him, that small voice lingered a shadow. I couldn't quite shake. The weeks that followed were a blur of joy and chaos. Ethan wanted a lavish wedding at his family's estate in upstate New York, complete with celebrity performers and a guest list that read like a Forbes cover. I wanted something smaller, something that felt like us, maybe a nod to my roots with gospel music and a soul food buffet. We compromised, settling on a ceremony that blended both worlds, elegant but personal, with white roses and blue hydrangeas, a nod to my grandma's garden, and a playlist that mixed jazz with hip-hop. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. Planning a wedding with a billionaire was its own kind of madness. Ethan's assistant handled vendors, but I insisted on being involved, choosing every detail from the invitations to the cake. My days were a whirlwind of work fittings and late-night calls with Ethan, who was traveling more than ever. He'd video call me from Tokyo or London, his face lighting up the screen, and I'd feel that pull, that certainty that we were building something real. But the closer we got to the wedding, the more I felt the weight of his world. Our first big test came when our families met. My mom and Jaden flew to New York for a dinner at Ethan's penthouse, a sleek space with floor-to-ceiling windows and art that cost more than my mom's house. My family was out of their element, and Ethan's wasn't much better. His mother, Margaret, a poised woman with a permanent air of disapproval, greeted us with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. His father, Charles, was gruff, asking questions about my background that made my teeth clench. "So," Zara Charles said, over appetizers swirling his wine, "your people are from Atlanta, you said? What do they do?" I forced a smile, my fork pausing midair. My mom's a retired teacher. My dad was a mechanic. They worked hard to give me and my brother a good life. He nodded, but his expression said he was unimpressed. Margaret chimed in, her voice smooth as silk. It must be quite a change stepping into Ethan's world. So many expectations. Ethan's hand found mine under the table, squeezing gently. "Zara handles expectations better than anyone I know," he said, his tone light but firm. "She's the one keeping me grounded." The moment passed, but the tension lingered. Jaden, never one to hold back, pulled me aside later. "You see how they look at you," he said, his voice low. "Like you're a guest in their house, not family. You sure about this, Zara?" "I love him," I said, but the words felt heavier than they should have. The engagement party was another glimpse into Ethan's world. A rooftop garden in Manhattan, transformed into an enchanted forest. Fairy lights twinkled, champagne flowed, and a string quartet played as Ethan led me around, introducing me to childhood friends and tech moguls as his fiancée. I wore a gold dress that shimmered under the lights, my braids cascading down my back, but I felt like I was playing a role, not living my life. The whispers were louder now, the stares bolder. One of Ethan's investors, a man with a fake tan and too many teeth, pulled him aside, thinking I couldn't hear. "She's stunning, Caldwell," he said. "But you sure you want to tie yourself down? Plenty of fish in the sea." Ethan's smile was tight. I found the only one that matters. I appreciated his defense, but it didn't erase the sting. Later, as we danced, his arms wrapped around me, he whispered, "In 5 months you'll be my wife. Nothing else matters." I wanted to believe him. I leaned into his chest, letting the music drown out the doubts. But as we spun under the twinkling lights, I caught Miles watching us, his expression unreadable. Something in his eyes sent a chill through me, a warning I couldn't quite name. Back in Brooklyn, my life felt like it was splitting in two. I'd moved into Ethan's penthouse, a decision that felt both thrilling and terrifying. My apartment with its vinyl records and colorful pillows was my sanctuary, proof of everything I'd built on my own. Giving it up meant letting go of a piece of myself, but love makes you do crazy things. I tried to make the penthouse ours, scattering my records among his minimalist furniture, hanging family photos on the stark white walls. Ethan embraced it, saying the place finally felt like a home, not a showroom. But my friends saw what I didn't want to admit. Nia, my best friend and a freelance journalist with a knack for calling it like it is, cornered me over drinks at a dive bar in Bed-Stuy. "You're glowing, Zara," she said, sipping her gin and tonic. "But you're also different, like you're trying to fit into his world instead of staying you." "I'm still me," I said, defensive. "I'm just in love." She raised an eyebrow. "Love's great, but don't lose yourself in it. You're Zara Brooks, the woman who built a career from nothing, who dances to Missy Elliott in her pajamas. Don't let his world erase that." Her words stuck with me, a nagging itch I couldn't scratch. I loved Ethan, but I was starting to wonder if I was losing pieces of myself to keep him. The late-night calls with vendors, the fittings for a dress that cost more than my car, the constant pressure to smile through the stares, it was exhausting. And Ethan, for all his love, was stretched thin, juggling his company and our wedding plans. He'd come home late, his phone buzzing with emails, and I'd catch a flicker of stress in his eyes before he'd pull me into a kiss and make it all disappear. One night as we cooked dinner in the penthouse, well, I cooked. He mostly chopped vegetables and got in the way. I tried to talk about it. "Do you ever feel like we're moving too fast?" I asked, stirring a pot of shrimp and grits, the smell filling the kitchen. He looked up from mangling a bell pepper, his brow furrowed. "Fast, Zara. I've been waiting my whole life for you." I laughed, but it didn't reach my heart. "I just mean, your world, your family, the board. It's a lot. Sometimes I wonder if I'm enough for it." He set down the knife and crossed the kitchen, pulling me into his arms. "You're more than enough," he said, his voice fierce. "You're everything, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life proving it." His kiss was warm, grounding, and I let myself believe him. But as I lay in bed that night, his arm draped over me. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were building a castle on sand. The ring on my finger was a promise, but promises could break. And deep down, I was starting to wonder if ours was strong enough to hold. The weeks after Ethan's proposal were a tightrope walk between bliss and dread. On one hand, I was floating engaged to a man who loved me fiercely, planning a wedding that felt like a love letter to both our worlds. On the other, I could feel the ground shifting beneath us, the cracks in our fairy tale growing wider with every passing day. Ethan's world wasn't just a different zip code, it was a different universe, one where I was constantly proving I belonged, and the harder I tried to fit in, the more I wondered if I was losing myself. Living in Ethan's penthouse didn't help. The place was stunning. Marble counters art that cost more than my mom's house views of Manhattan, that made my breath catch, but it wasn't home. My vinyl records looked out of place next to his sleek sound system, and my colorful throw pillows clashed with the minimalist vibe. Ethan swore he loved the changes, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was a guest in his life, not a partner. My Brooklyn apartment, now sublet to a grad student, had been my anchor proof of everything I'd built on my own. Without it, I felt unmoored, like I was drifting further from the Zara I'd always been. Ethan was trying. I could see that. He'd cut back on travel to help with wedding plans, sitting through endless meetings with florists and caterers, even suggesting we add a gospel choir to the ceremony to honor my roots. But he was stretched thin, his phone buzzing constantly with emails from his team, his brow furrowed more often than not. I'd catch him staring out the penthouse windows, lost in thought, and when I asked what was wrong, he'd flash that disarming smile and say, "Just work, babe. Nothing we can't handle." But it wasn't just work. I could feel it in the way he tensed when certain topics came up in the silences that stretched longer during our dinners. Something was brewing, and he wasn't telling me what. The first real blow came 3 months before the wedding at a dinner with Ethan's business partners at a swanky restaurant in Tribeca, the kind of place where the menu didn't list prices and the waiters moved like they were auditioning for a ballet. I'd gotten used to these events, the small talk about yacht vacations, the wives who only discussed charity galas and private schools. But this one felt different. There was an undercurrent of tension, like everyone was waiting for something to break. Ethan was seated across from me, deep in conversation with a silver-haired investor named Roger, while I chatted with Roger's wife about her latest fundraiser. But I kept catching snippets of hushed talks around the table, words like image and stability floating my way. When Roger pulled Ethan aside during dessert, their voices low and urgent, I saw Miles watching me, his expression unreadable. My stomach twisted. Later in the car, I couldn't hold it in. "What's going on, Ethan?" I asked, my voice sharp as we sped through the city. "And don't tell me it's nothing. I saw you with Roger." I heard Miles talking about optics again. Ethan's hands tightened on the steering wheel. His jaw set. "It's complicated," he said, his tone clipped. "Some investors are concerned about the company's direction. What does that have to do with me?" I pressed, though. I already knew the answer. He hesitated, and that pause told me everything. "There's been talk," he said finally, "about how my personal choices might affect the company's image." "Personal choices?" I repeated, my voice steady despite the heat rising in my chest. "You mean me? They think marrying a black woman is bad for business." "It's ridiculous," he said quickly, reaching for my hand. Outdated, small-minded nonsense. I told them my life's not up for board approval, but his words didn't soothe the sting. I pulled my hand away, staring out the window at the blur of lights. "It's not just the board. Ethan, it's your world. I'm the only black woman at these dinners, the only one who gets asked if she's with the staff. And now your investors are saying I'm a liability." He parked outside the penthouse, turning to face me, his eyes pleading. "Zara, I love you. I don't care what they think. We're stronger than this." I wanted to believe him, but the seed of doubt had taken root. "Are we?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Because it feels like I'm fighting to belong in a place that doesn't want me." He leaned across the console, cupping my face, his thumb brushing my cheek. "You belong with me," he said, his voice fierce, "and I'll fight anyone who says otherwise." His kiss was desperate, like he was trying to pour his conviction into me. I kissed him back, clinging to the heat of his touch. But when we pulled apart, the doubt was still there, a shadow I couldn't outrun. The next morning, I woke to a nightmare. My phone was buzzing with notifications, texts from Nia and my colleagues piling up. A gossip site had published an article, Ethan Caldwell's exotic fiancé gold digger or true love. The photo was from the Tribeca dinner, me in a sleek black dress, laughing at something Ethan said. The article was a venomous mix of speculation and stereotypes, calling me a rising star with questionable motives and hinting that I was using Ethan to climb the social ladder. The comments were worse racial slurs, memes, accusations that I was too different to fit into his world. I sat on the edge of the bed, my hands shaking as I scrolled. Ethan was still asleep, his arm draped across the sheets, but I couldn't breathe. This wasn't just gossip. It was an attack on my identity, my worth. I called Naya, my voice trembling. "Did you see it?" I asked, barely holding it together. "Yeah," she said, her tone furious. "It's trash, Zara. You know that, but you need to talk to Ethan. This isn't just about you. It's about his company, his people. They're letting this happen." When Ethan woke, I showed him the article. His face hardened, his jaw clenching as he read. "I'll handle it," he said, already dialing his PR team. "This ends now." He spent the day on calls demanding the article be pulled, threatening legal action. By evening, the post was down, replaced with a generic apology from the site. But the damage was done. My colleagues were whispering. My social media was a minefield, and I felt exposed, like the world had stripped me bare and judged what they saw. That night, I stood in the penthouse kitchen stirring a pot of shrimp and grits, trying to ground myself in something familiar. Ethan came up behind me, his arms wrapping around my waist, his chin resting on my shoulder. "I'm so sorry," he murmured, his voice heavy. "I should have protected you better." I turned, meeting his eyes. "It's not just the article, Ethan. It's everything. Your board, your friends, the way people look at me. I'm trying so hard, but I don't know if I can keep doing this." He pulled me closer, his hands warm against my back. "You don't have to do it alone," he said. "We're a team, Zara. You and me against the world." His words were a lifeline, and I clung to them. We ended up on the couch, the grits forgotten, our bodies pressed together as we tried to shut out the noise. His kisses were slow, deliberate, each one a promise to fix what was breaking. My hands slid under his shirt, tracing the lines of his chest, and for a moment, I let myself believe we could outrun the storm. But as we lay there afterward, the city lights glittering outside, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were only delaying the inevitable. The weeks that followed were a tug-of-war between love and doubt. Ethan doubled down, showering me with gestures, surprise deliveries of protea flowers, weekend getaways, handwritten notes tucked into my work bag, but he was also distracted. His phone, a constant buzz of notifications. He'd cancel date nights for emergency meetings, then overcompensate with extravagant gifts, a diamond necklace, a trip to Paris that I didn't have time for. I didn't want his money. I wanted him, the man who danced with me in my mom's backyard, who'd laughed when I taught him to two-step to Outcast. Our biggest fight came 2 months before the wedding, when I found out he'd rescheduled our meeting with the wedding officiant to join Miles for a last-minute business trip to London. I was in the penthouse surrounded by fabric swatches and seating charts when he texted me the change. Something snapped. "This is the third wedding thing you've bailed on," I said when he got home, my voice shaking with hurt. "If this isn't a priority, just say it." He tossed his keys on the counter, his face weary. "That's not fair, Zara. I'm juggling a lot right now." "Not fair," I shot back, standing up from the couch. "I've put my career on hold to plan this wedding to fit into your life, and you can't even make a 1-hour meeting. I'm trying to secure our future." He shouted, his calm facade cracking. "You think this is easy?" The board's breathing down my neck, the investors are freaking out, and I'm doing everything I can to keep it together. I froze, his words hitting like a slap. "Keep what together? Your company or us?" His face fell, vulnerability replacing anger. "You're everything to me," he said, his voice softer now. I'm trying to make everyone happy." "Then stop," I said, tears burning my eyes. "Stop trying to please them and start putting us first, or this isn't going to work." The silence was deafening. He crossed the room, pulling me into his arms, his hands trembling. "I'm sorry," he whispered, his lips brushing my forehead. "I'll do better, I promise." That night he held me tighter than usual, his body pressed against mine as if he could anchor us both. We made love on the living room floor, the city lights casting shadows across our skin, each touch a desperate attempt to mend what was breaking. His hands were gentle, his kisses a plea, and I gave myself to him, wanting to believe we could fix this. But as I lay in his arms afterward, my head on his chest, I couldn't ignore the truth. Promises weren't enough anymore. The next morning, Ethan announced he was taking 2 weeks off. No calls, no meetings, just us. He whisked me away to the Maldives, to an overwater bungalow where the sea stretched endless and blue. It was like the early days of our relationship, tender, passionate, full of laughter and late-night talks. We swam in bioluminescent waters, the glowing waves swirling around us like magic. We explored local markets hand in hand, haggling over spices and laughing when I teased him for being a terrible negotiator. At night we'd lie under the stars, his arms around me, and he'd whisper about our future, a house by the ocean, kids with my smile and his stubbornness. One evening as we watched the sunset from our private deck, He looked at me with an intensity that made my heart ache. "Marrying you is the best decision I've ever made," he said, his voice steady. "No matter what happens, you're my home." I smiled, kissing him softly, but his words lingered heavy with an unspoken weight. "Why do you say it like that?" I asked, pulling back. "Like something's going to happen." He shook his head, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. "Nothing's gonna happen. 3 more weeks and you'll be Mrs. Caldwell." I pushed the unease away, choosing to focus on the warmth of his arms, the beauty of the sunset. We were just pre-wedding jitters, I told myself. Every couple had them. But as we fell asleep that night, the sound of waves lulling me, I couldn't shake the feeling that a storm was coming, one we might not survive. The morning of my wedding day started like a dream. Sunlight poured through the windows of the luxury hotel suite Ethan had booked, casting a golden glow over the chaos of my bridal party. Nia, my cousins, and my best friend from college bustled around, mimosas in hand, their laughter filling the air. The makeup artist was setting up her station brushes and palettes, spread across a vanity like an artist's canvas. My wedding dress hung on the closet door, a vision of silk and beadwork shimmering like a promise. I stood in the center of it all, my heart so full it hurt, knowing that in a few hours I'd be Mrs. Zara Caldwell. My phone pinged with a text from Ethan. "Can't wait to see you walking down that aisle. I love you more than you'll ever know." I hugged the phone to my chest, my cheeks aching from smiling. After all the doubts, the fights, the whispers from his world, we were here. We were doing this. My mom helped me into my dress, her hands steady as she adjusted the straps. Her eyes shimmered with pride, but there was something else there too. Concern maybe, or caution. "You look beautiful, baby," she said, smoothing my veil. "Are you sure this is what you want?" I met her gaze in the mirror, my reflection. A stranger in white. "I've never been more sure," I said. And in that moment I meant it. Ethan was my home, my future. Nothing could change that. The morning blurred by hairspray, laughter, happy tears. By noon, we were at the venue, a historic mansion just outside New York City, its gardens blooming with white roses and blue hydrangeas. Everything was perfect, exactly as we'd planned. The string quartet playing softly, champagne, chilling for the 300 guests who'd soon arrive. I paced the bridal suite, my stomach fluttering with nerves, but they were the good kind, the kind that came with knowing you were about to step into forever. At 1:00 p.m., the wedding planner poked her head in her smile tight. "Just a little delay," she said. "Groom's probably stuck in traffic." I nodded, brushing it off. Ethan was never late, but weddings were chaos. It happened. By 1:30, the flutters turned to unease. I called him, but it went straight to voicemail. I texted, but the message stayed unread. Nia, pacing beside me, tried to keep things light. "He's probably fixing his tie for the 1,000,000th time," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. My mom sat quietly, her hands clasped, watching me like she could sense the storm coming. At 2:00, guests were arriving, their chatter drifting up from the garden. The planner's smile was gone, replaced by a strained grimace as she whispered into her headset. I paced faster, my dress swishing against the hardwood floor, my carefully applied makeup threatening to melt under the heat of rising panic. Where was he? Why wasn't he answering? At 2:15, the door opened and Miles walked in, his face grim. My heart sank before he even spoke. "Zara," he said, avoiding my eyes. "Ethan sent me to talk to you." "Where is he?" My voice was a stranger's, thin and far away. Nia stepped closer, her hand on my arm as my bridesmaids froze, their champagne flutes forgotten. Miles handed me an envelope embossed with Ethan's initials. "He asked me to give you this," he said, He's not coming. The words hit like a physical blow. The room spun, and I sank onto the chaise lounge, my dress fanning out around me. Naya gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "What do you mean he's not coming?" she demanded, but Miles only shook his head, his jaw tight. With trembling hands, I tore open the envelope. The letter was handwritten, Ethan's familiar scrawl blurring as tears filled my eyes. "My dearest Zara, by the time you read this, I'll be on a plane out of the country. I can't go through with our wedding, though. It breaks my heart to hurt you. The pressure from my family, my board, my investors. It's too much. They threaten to take everything I've built. If I married you, I thought I was strong enough to fight for us, but I failed. I failed you, and I'll regret it for the rest of my life. You deserve someone braver, someone who'll put you first without hesitation. Please forgive me someday. All my love, Ethan." The letter slipped from my fingers, fluttering to the floor. My mom knelt beside me, her arms wrapping around me. But I couldn't feel her. I couldn't feel anything. 300 guests were waiting outside expecting a wedding, and I was sitting here in a dress that cost a fortune with a heart shattered into pieces. Miles cleared his throat, shifting awkwardly. "The company will cover all the expenses," he said, placing another envelope on the side table. "And Ethan's arranged a settlement for you." "I'm sorry." Rage surged through me, hot and fierce. I grabbed the envelope and threw it at him, my voice breaking. "Tell Ethan to keep his damn money. I never wanted it. I wanted him." Miles flinched, but said nothing, slipping out the door. The silence that followed was suffocating, broken only by Nia's quiet curse and my mom's soft, "Oh, baby." I stared at the letter on the floor, Ethan's words burning into me. "I failed you." He hadn't just failed me. He'd chosen his empire, his privilege over the life we'd promised each other, and I'd been fool enough to believe he wouldn't. Before I could process what to do next, the door opened again. This time it was Sophie, Ethan's younger sister. She was 25 with the same green eyes as Ethan, but none of his polish. Her blonde hair pulled into a messy bun. She'd always been kind to me, a rare ally in his family. But now her face was pale, her eyes red from crying. "Zara," she said, her voice trembling. "Can I talk to you? Alone?" Nia started to protest, but I nodded, waving her off. My mom and the others stepped out, leaving me with Sophie in the bridal suite, the air thick with the scent of roses and betrayal. Sophie sat beside me, twisting her hands in her lap. "I'm so sorry," she said, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I tried to talk to him to make him see, but he wouldn't listen." "What happened, Sophie?" I asked, my voice hoarse. "Why did he do this?" She took a shaky breath, looking down at the floor. "It's not just the board or our parents. It's happened before. Ethan was in love once. Years ago with a woman named Lena. She wasn't from our world. She was a teacher from a working-class family. He wanted to marry her, but our parents and the board shut it down. They threatened to cut him off to tank his company. Lena left, and Ethan, he broke. He's never been the same since." My chest tightened, a new kind of pain slicing through me. "Why didn't he tell me?" "He was ashamed," Sophie said, her voice barely a whisper. "He thought he could be stronger this time for you. He fought them, Zara. He told the board he'd walk away if they pushed him, but last night they gave him an ultimatum, you or the company, and he chose wrong." The words landed like a punch. The only communication I acknowledged was an email from his lawyers outlining a generous compensation for the unfortunate circumstances. As if my heart was a business deal he could settle with a check. For days I barely moved, alternating between numbness and searing pain. The settlement check sat uncashed on my dresser, a reminder of everything I'd lost. Taking it felt like admitting our love had been transactional, a lie I couldn't face. But one morning after a dream where Ethan's face blurred into nothing, I woke with a clarity I hadn't felt in weeks. I got out of bed, showered for the first time in days, and stared at myself in the mirror, my braids loose, my eyes tired but alive. You will not let him destroy you, I told my reflection, my voice firm. You were somebody before Ethan Caldwell, and you'll be somebody after him. I cashed the check that day, not because I wanted his money, but because I deserved it.